الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين العاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, we are continuing in the permission of Allah Jalla wa Ala, the exemplary explanation of Surah Al-Faatihah by Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah. This tremendous tafsir or explanation of the Shaykh, as you also see, I have too many pures and benefits that can be extracted from the surah. Walhamdulillah, to ishtimalu Faatihah ala shafa'ain. The Shaykh now the surah as being a healer, that this surah comprises or consists of two aspects of healing. Okay, this surah serves as a healing to mankind from two angles. Ibn Qayyim al-Jaziyya rahmatullah ta'ala is going to explain that. He says, Al-Faatihah ala shafa'ain, shafa'u qulub wa shafa'u abdan. He said that when it comes to Al-Faatihah, all right, the opening of the book, then it is a healer it consists of two healings. Shifa'u qulub is a healing for that which is in the heart, okay, that which cures or the illnesses or the sickness within the heart. The heart, as well as Shifa'u Abdan, is also a cure or a treatment or a healing for that which happened from a physical ailment from the bodies. Okay, he says, فَأَمَّا اشْتِمَالُهَا عَلَى شِفَاءِ الْقُلُوبِ فَإِنَّهَا اشْتِمَالَتْ عَلَيْهِ أَتِمَّ اشْتِمَالٍ مِنَ مَدَارِ اعْتِلَالُ قُلُوبِ قَامِهَا عَلَى أَصْلَيْنِ. And it's tremendous here. He's going to explain, as for what comprises the first type of healing that's found for that which is in the heart. All right, he said, then what's comprised within this surah, it revolves around the defects or the illnesses or the sicknesses within the heart that are revolved around two principles. All right, there are two origins for why we find the heart being sick. Why are the heart sick, or why are the heart defected, or why does it be illnesses within the heart? Then he says, fasadul ilm wal fasadul qasd. These are the two reasons why you will find a heart being sick. All right, they all revolve around these two principles. Fasadul ilm, meaning the corruption of knowledge, the knowledge which is corrupted. Yeah, I need this from multiple angles. It can be corrupted, and the corruption of a person's intention or aspiration or objective, okay, or their aim. And he said that you will find that both of these sick illnesses, these deadly diseases, okay, you will find that they are based upon two, they are based upon two deadly illnesses, which is ad-dalal wa ghadab, okay, which is misguidance and anger or rancor. فالدلال نتيجة فساد العلم. For the outcome or the result of misguidance, then it is the corruption of a person's knowledge. He says, وَغَضَبْ يَتِيجُهُ فَسَادُ قَصْدٍ. And the outcome or the result of rancor or anger is the corruption of a person's intention or objective. And if I don't know if you are really paying attention to what the Shaykh is doing, if you notice in Surah Al-Fatihah, what do Allah Jalla wa Ala command the servant to seek to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from, to seek refuge from, and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم, يعني الغضب, anger, غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين, الضلال, misguidance. So dalal or ghadab, if you see, there are two types of groups whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guidance, but not of the ways of these two individuals, those who incur Allah's wrath, who is anger, and those who are misguided. And we already know who the people who incur Allah's wrath and the people who are misguided. But look how deep Ibn Qayyim is saying. He's saying that the illnesses that's found within the people's heart is a result that is based off of these two deadly diseases. And those deadly diseases is none other but misguidance, which is fasad al-ilm. The outcome of misguidance is the corruption of knowledge. And then he's saying that the ghadab is the outcome of fasad al-qasd, meaning a person's intentions or objections. Okay, so a person can do an act, but if the act was done without any knowledge or any pure intention, etc., right? Then what occur from that? Dalal, misguidance occur from that. Henceforth, this is why the people of Dalala, there are those who act without any ilm, they act without any knowledge. And the people who incur the ghadab, those who incur Allah's anger or Allah's wrath, there are those who corrupt knowledge. Why? Because they are the ones who have ilm, but they do not act according to that ilm. All right, they don't act according to that knowledge, or they distort that knowledge. And in that case, they incur Allah's wrath. So you see how it all connects it back into the illness of the heart, which you will find that it stems from these two things. So the Shaykh, he says, وَهَذَانِ مَرْضَانِ هُمَا مَلَاكُ الْأَمْرَاضِ الْقُلُوبِ جَمِيعَهَا. He said, in these two things that he mentioned, these two illnesses, all right, misguidance and anger, he says they are the destruction, or they are the malak, the heads of the sicknesses or the illness found in the heart, all of them. فَهِدَايَةُ صِرَاطِ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ تَدَمَّ الشَّفَاءُ مِنْ مَرَضِ الدَّلَالِ. He says, so the guidance to the straight path, it comprises the healing or the cure for the sickness of misguidance. ولذلك كان سؤال هذه الهداية أفرض دعاء على كل عبد وأوجبه عليه كل يوم وليلة. He said, for that reason, you will find that the questioning, asking for hidayah, right? أفرض دعاء, right, is the most obligatory or the most compulsory of dua upon every servant, which is binding upon him or her to ask constantly for in a day and night, every day and night. Meaning, in other words, you say Al-Faatihah, if you recite it, if you pray 5 times a day, you will say it over. If you recite the Al-Faatihah, subhanAllah, if you pray the 5 prayers, you will be saying the Al-Faatihah in the daytime as well as in the evening time. You will say Al-Faatihah. So you're ordered to say the dua seeking guidance ihdina sirata every night and day. And this is why it's compulsory to ask for this hidayah, because hidayah is a cure for misguidance. Hidayah is a cure for misguidance. He says, في كل صلاة لشتى ضروره وفاقني إلى هداية المطلوبة. He says, in every salat you have been commanded to ask, every salat, the severe necessity for asking for this hidayah. وَلَا يَقُومُ غَيْرُ هَذَا سُؤَالَ مُقَامِهِ. And there's nothing else you can ask that would take its position that is stronger or more forceful than that. Asking for Allah's guidance so that you don't fall into misguidance. Now I want you to pay attention to what he get ready to say next. He says, وَتَحَقُّ بِإِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Now Al-Fatiha is going to make a little sense to you. You're going to see how everything lays up. So in the beginning, alhamdulillah, we already did. This is the 4th video. So for those who didn't catch the first, Ibn Qayyim, he takes us through that journey from the first half, which is for Allah Azza wa Jal. He deals with those names, those attributes, which revolves around, and then he rounds up here. So I want you to see how Iyyaka na'budu wa Iyyaka nasta'in, which this ayat plays a fundamental role within the dua itself and Al-Fatiha, because it is an ayat shared between both Allah and the servant. But this ayah is so tremendous, right, that all of this is going to be confirmed or actualized within this verse itself. Okay, seeking from misguidance, seeking from dalal, from ghadab, from anger, all going to be based off of this. Look how the Shaykh, he says, you alone do we worship, you alone do we seek. He says, ilman wa ma'rifatin wa amalan wa halin. Knowledge, actions, condition, يتضمن شفاء من مرض فساد القلب والقصد. So both type of illnesses where we find that each, the usl of all of the illnesses that affects a person's heart revolves around these two types of things: fasad al-ilm, corruption of knowledge, and fasad al-qasd, the corruption of a person's intention or objective. Right? He said that this here, he says then the shifa' min marad what comprises of this verse comprises the healing from those sicknesses, those two types of sicknesses. Because when we think about the fasad al-qasd, when we think about the corruption of a person's objective, then that is connected to a person's aspirations, and it's the person to connected to the person means, how a person go about doing something. All right, how a person goes about carrying out something. So that's connected to that. He says, فمن طالب غايات منقطعة محملة فانية وتواصل إليها بأنواع ووسائل مواصلة إليها كان كلا نوع قصده فاسدا، وهذا شأن كل من كان غاية مطلوبه غير الله وعبوديته من المشركين واتبع الشهوات الذين لا غاية لهم وراءها. So when you look at the people who commit shirk, for example, right? Those people who commit polytheists, the means that they take for their acts of worship, or worshiping or serving other than Allah, that road or that path that they take, those aims or aspirations, which is not purely done for the sake of Allah, but for other than Him, then we know that it leads down to those corrupted things. This is a corrupted path. Also, it shows that the person's intention is what? Is spoiled and corrupted. Right? And they follow their desires. Okay. He said, so we know that from these individuals who worship other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know that their objective, their intentions, their aspirations is all corrupt. Why? Because it's corrupt in the way that they go about trying to approach worship, or trying to get to Allah Jalla wa Ala, or trying to seek nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, and we see that when their ghayat, their objectives become invalid, that which they sought after, right? Why they will become invalid. And that what happens as a result of that is that they wind up in being in great destruction and misery and loss. He said, you will find them to be the most greatest people or serious people in regret and remorse. إذا حقق حق وباطل باطل وتقطع بهم أسباب وصل التي كانت بينهم وتيقن انتقائهم أن ركب فلاح وسعادة. And you'll find that these people, you'll find that they'll be in misery and so forth because of the path that they chose to go down, and it wasn't the correct path. All right, and the means that they use to approach. That's why it's important that whatever approach you want to take towards Allah Azza wa Jalla, it had to be done towards the way that He had legislated, because if not, you will find yourself in regret, remorse, and you will be upon misguidance. You will be upon misguidance. He says, now, he mentioned, he goes on, he says, he says, and all to say that the cure for this sickness or this illness will not be found except in the treatment of the verse إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. That is the cure. فإن هذا الدواء مركب من ستة أجزاء. He said, because when we look at this cure, this treatment that's found in this verse, you're going to find that it comprises of 6 parts. One is ubudiyatul lillahi la ghayruhu, establishing worship for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and no one else besides Him. 2, bi amrihi wa shar'ihi, by His commandments, those things which He commands you to do and those things which He had legislated for you to do. La bil hawa, not by your desires. You don't worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala according to how you feel. All right, there is no such thing of worshiping Allah according to how you feel. Today I feel this way, so today I'm gonna do this. La. That's called because ibadat is tawqifiyya, as the ulama explained to us, that ibadat, acts of worship, are restricted to text, Quran and Sunnah. So it's not restricted to how our whims and desires are. All right, that's not how it's based. It's based off what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated for us and what His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam has legislated for us, and that will be considered ibadah. All right, but to do an act just because you feel like doing that act, if it's an act of ibadah, then it have to be established with evidence. All right, it's not according to how you feel. So here he's saying, not according to hawa. It's not going to be according to desires. Yeah, and he says, وَلَا بِأَوْرَاءِ الرِّجَالِ وَأَوْضَاعِهِمْ وَرُسُومِهِمْ وَأَفْكَارِهِمْ. So you have to understand, nor is it going to be connected to ideologies and concepts, all right, or opinions of other men. Okay, my sheikh said so and so, this person said so and so, this person feels this way. That's not how it's done. It's not going to be connected to those things. All right, this is why it's important. Call Allah, call Rasulullah. That is important. All right, call Allah, call Rasulullah. Very important. Call Allah, call Rasulullah, wa fahm sahaba. All right? We'll call a Sahaba. And the reason why they might say we'll call a Sahaba, as the ulama explains, because one of the establishing points of sources of evidence would be ijma', okay? What would be consensus, all right? Nonetheless, the ulama, they explain that there are conditions for the statements of the Sahabas to be accepted as dalil. This is not the time to go into that. There are three conditions that's famously known for a Sahabi statement or action to be considered as a dalil. But nonetheless, all right, he's saying that it shouldn't be tied to desires nor the opinions or ideologies of different men, okay? It should be based off Qala Allah, Qala Rasulullah. Qayyim. He says, وَالْإِسْتِعَانَةُ عَلَى عُبُودِيَّتِهِ بِهِ. And this is a big important thing. And seeking assistance in worshiping Allah. See, you can't worship Allah without assistance. That's what this verse is telling you. And he's going to explain that in this next chapter, which will be for the next video. But in this particular thing, he's telling you that a part of the 6 things that he mentioned, a part of this is that what? You have to seek assistance for worship, all right? And this removes all of that crazy stuff, which he's going to talk about next. People got to stop thinking just because you can do an act of worship that you think that you came up with that or you're doing that all on your own. Nah, you don't make you better than nobody because you're doing that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to make those individuals better. And that's his preference. But he assisted them in doing that in the first place. Because there's no act of ibadah that is established. That's what this verse is saying to you. Without the aid and assistance of Allah. If Allah doesn't aid or assist you, you will not be able to worship. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You alone do we worship, and you alone we aid or assistance we seek. Tayyib, he says here, after that he says, لا بنفس العبد وقوته وحوله ولا بغيره. He said it's not up to the servant himself. Yani, it's not up to the servant himself, nor his strength, nor his might, right? Or other than him. It's only by the aid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he's able to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, period. Tayyib, he says, فَهَذِهِ هِيَ أَجْزَاءٌ. He says, so these things I just mentioned, these are the different parts that can be found within the statement, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You alone do we worship, and you alone we aid, we seek. إِذَا رَكَّبَهَا الطَّبِيبُ اللَّطِيفُ. He says, so if a طبيب لطيف, a subtle doctor, a generous doctor, were to embark upon this ayat, right? عَالِمٌ بِالْمَرْضِ, someone who is knowledgeable about the illness, all right? Which if you don't know, Ibn Qayyim is telling you there are 2 types of doctors, all right? There's the doctors of the body, and there's the doctors of the heart. And there's no doubt that the illness of the heart are many, and they are more more severe than the illness of the body. All right. All right. So the alim al-Rabbani, okay, that alim al-Rabbani is a doctor of the heart. A alim al-Rabbani is a doctor of the heart. All right. Not like just a tabib or a doctor that's found in a mustashfa, a hospital, or so forth, but a doctor of the heart. Tayyib, he says, وَاسْتِعْمَالَهَا الْمَرِيض. And the patient, he uses the treatment. He takes a hold of the treatment, okay, so they can cure himself. He says, حَصَلَ بِهَا شِفَاءُ التَّامُ. That by that way, the complete cure will happen. It would be effective. The person will be completely cured if he take these following steps. All right. وَمَا نَقَصَ مِنَ الشِّفَاءِ فَهُوَ لِفَاتُ جُزْءٍ مِنْ الْجَزَاهِ أَوْ اثْنَيْنِ أَوْ أَكْثَرَ. And he says the deficiency in the cure itself is going to happen if there's something missing within the parts that he mentioned that this ayat consists of from those 6 things. Either it's a portion missing from their parts, 2 or more. It doesn't matter. If they all not establish, if something is missing from it, then the complete effect of the cure will not happen. طيب, he says, ثم إن القلب يعرض له مرضين عظيمان إن لم يتداركهما العبد تراميا به إلى التلف ولا بد وهما الرياء والكبر فالدواء الرياء إياك نعبد والدواء الكبر إياك نستعين. Subhanallah. He says, so then the heart will become exposed to 2 types of illnesses here. Okay, and those illnesses are tremendous illnesses, 2 great illnesses. If the servant does not, take the proper steps to cure himself and to prevent those things from actually happening, right? Them 2 illnesses would be al-riya'u which is riyah. We already know that they call it showing off. Um, there's other translation for it. The act of loving to be seen, okay, or wanting your deed to be exposed, or doing the deed for other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that you can be noticed of it. This is all fall under what we call al-riyah. And from al-riyah is what we call as-sum'ah. When you hear the word as-sum'ah, they mean to love to be heard, people to listen to you, or mentioning, yeah, I did such and such, or I memorized such and such, or I fasted such and such, or I did such and such. All of these things fall under the bab of al-riyah, which is dangerous, all right? Which is dangerous and is a form of shirk, which is dangerous and no doubt is a form of shirk. Tayyib, and the Prophet ﷺ said about this riyah, he said that it is more hidden than a black ant on a dark night under a rock. All right, so we already know how small an ant is. We already know how dark it would be, and especially under a rock. So if it's that hidden, so we already know how obscure it can be. So it's really dangerous as far as al-riyah. So riyah is an illness, all right, that the heart can be exposed to. All right, also al-kibriyah. Al-kibriyah is arrogance, all right? That arrogance that the Prophet ﷺ told us that arrogance is what? Is to look down, is to what? Arrogance is to boast that you have the haqq and to look down on others, okay? As a person is saying, I have the haqq yani, with me, or have truth, and then he boasted or lord over others, this is, or putting down others, this is actually arrogance, all right? So he says that these two illnesses are exposed to the heart, and they can only be warded off or repelled from this verse itself. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. He says, because the cure for riyah is iyyaka na'bud. You alone do we worship. That's the cure for riyah. Because if your acts and your actions is done for Allah's sake only, then you only worrying about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you only worshiping Allah, and you only doing it for Allah. That removes it wanting to be seen or heard from other people. No? So that's the cure or the treatment for riyah. He says for kibra, for arrogance, then it's iyyaka nasta'in. It's you alone we aid, we seek, because you know you can't do anything on your own. It's not by your might, it's not by your strength, it's all about Allah's aid. So if you seek Allah's aid and only his aid, and you know that you need his assistance, as is mentioned from the hadith of Aisha, from the author I mentioned about Aisha, that we will make dua for anything, yani, even down to our shoelaces. Okay, so even when it comes to the shoelaces, they were still calling Allah and seeking Allah's assistance. All right, this is tremendous because it shows you their level of tawakkul on Allah Azza wa Jal, which removes the concept of being prideful or arrogant. Tayyib, he says, that is refuted. Arrogance is refuted with iyyaka nasta'in. He says, وَكَثِيرًا مَا كُنْتُ أَسْمَعْ شَيْخ الإسلام ابن تيمية قدس الله روحه يقول إياك نعبد وقدس الله روحه يقول إياك نعبد تدفع الرياء وإياك نستعين تدفع كبر. He says, and how often have I heard Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, his Shaykh, inshallah, and he says, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sanctify his soul or his spirit. He's saying that إياك نعبد wards off riyah, and إياك نستعين wards off arrogance. He says, how often times I would hear Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah say this, that iyyaka na'budu, it repels or it wards off riyah, showing off, and iyyaka nasta'in, it wards off yani kibr. Now, think about it. Let's just go back. Just read. Let's just think about it. Now that we're getting a better, more detailed insight of Al-Faatihah, right? What should you be taking from Al-Faatihah? Does it affect your character? Does it affect the way that you interact with creation and how you interact with the Creator? The answer is yes. Wala shak. Wala read. No doubt that it should. Al-Faatihah should affect your character from two perspectives. All right? Because you have to have adab in the law or adab in the nas. You have to have etiquettes with Allah and you have to have etiquettes with the people. Tayyib, along with yourself, as it comes from that tremendous hadith, that have two illustrious narrators from the Sahabiyin, from the Sahaba, where they mentioned that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, the Prophet sallallahu said, "Taqillaha was haythama kunt, ittaqillaha haythama kunt." Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wherever you may be. All right, and follow up a evil deed with a good deed, and will do what? It will tamsuha. It will wipe away it. He says, وَخَالَقَ النَّاسُ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ, and interact with the people in a good manner. All right. So the ulama, they mentioned that when it comes to al-khuluq, when it comes to character, then character is divided into three. It's the character that you have with your Lord, yani, and then it's the character which you have with yourself, your nafs, and then it's the character that you have with the people. So when you think of Al-Fatiha, because it's divided between Allah and it's divided between the servant, all right, and that first three verses is comprising the rights of Allah Azza wa Jal, the rububiyyah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his mulk, his dominion, which still falls under his rububiyyah, his rahmah, all right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rahmah. These things are tied to that, and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, uluhiyyah, his divinity. So if it's connected to all of that, then that's your character with Allah, is that you establish the tawheed with Allah Azza wa Jal, that you single him out alone, that you worship him alone, that you dedicate your service to him alone. This is good, proper etiquette and character with Allah Azza wa Jal. All right. So it should affect your ibadah. So when we say character with Allah, then think of your ibadah. So when you say Al-Fatiha affects how you interact, yes, it affects how you interact with your Lord, how you think of Allah Azza wa Jal, because Allah informed you about himself in Al-Fatiha. He tells you about himself. He tells you of tremendous attributes and names that he possesses, that he has, that you have an understanding of, which is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. You understand those two attributes, those two names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that one is an attribute and one is the action of the attribute, which is Ar-Rahman is extensive, yani, and is wasi'ah, and that Ar-Rahman is the effect of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mercy is his action, and he bestows it upon whomsoever he wills. When you understand those, that, and that he's Al-Malik Yawmiddin, that the true control is in his hand, which is his rububiyyah, and all of these things, you will understand what? How to behave and interact with Allah, period. So that should shape your ibadah. Now, as far as your character, how you interact with nas, and with people and with yourself and so forth, then the Fatiha does that as well. As you see in this, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, it refutes and wore off showing off, feeling like you're too, you understand, feeling like you too big, or being amazed with oneself, like you came up with this all on your own. Nah, it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yani, by worshiping alone and making dedicating, that brings about the sincerity, which is good adab to have, and then warding off arrogance, that does what? That makes you not look down on people. All right, that makes you realize where you're at and putting you in your proper place. So yes, it does give you character. This is what Al-Fatiha does. So when you're reading Al-Fatiha in the Salat, you're reciting it over 17 times a day. If you pray 5 times a day, you're reciting Al-Fatiha 17 times a day. Do you really ponder on what you're actually saying? It does make you better. Al-Fatiha does make you better if you understand it. All right, that's the key thing here. Fahm. You have to have understanding of it. And inshallah ta'ala, that's what we're trying to do now. Get a better understanding of the Fatiha. He says here, just to wrap it up, he says, so he already mentioned that issue. Okay. Now, he says, and from the sickness or the illness of misguidance and ignorance, then it's the statement of Allah Azza wa Jalla when he tells us to say in Al-Fatiha, guide us to the straight path. Sirat al-Mustaqim, guide us to the straight path. What is the straight path? How do we suppose to behave, think, interact, etc., etc., etc.? What is that straight path? We don't know what that straight path is, not on our own. All right. And if anyone come along to tell us what the straight path is, that is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nor his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we can't accept it as being the straight path. So this is what we ask, and only Allah. You alone do we worship, and you alone who aid we seek, which showing us that we only seek this from Allah. Guide us to the straight path. What is the straight path? Ibn Qayyim, he says here, he mentioned that, he says, أوفي من أمراض واسقامه ورفل في أثواب العافية وتم عليه نعمة وكان من منعم عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم وهم أهل الفساد القاص الذين عرفوا الحق وعدلوا عنه الضالين وهم أهل الفساد العلم الذين جهلوا الحق ولم يعرفوه. So he says that being guided, here, this is the treatment that you're going to find for the sicknesses that's found within the heart. And your person is able to receive those rewards of afia, well-being, and safety. And Allah can complete His favor upon them. And He will be from those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have conferred His favor upon. If Allah grant him this, the hidayah to the Sirat al-Mustaqim. He says, غير المغضوب عليهم. What does that mean? وهم أهل الفساد القصد. These are the people that we talked about earlier. What he says, that the illnesses is going to be found on two principles, either from the angle of a person with corrupt knowledge, okay, and that's the people who, not those who will serve your anger. He says, الذين عرفوا الحق, those who know the truth, وأدلوا عنه, and they turn away from it. All right, الضالين, those who are misguided. He says they are the people of fasad al-ilm. Okay. He said, الَّذِينَ جَهَلُوا حَقٍّ, they are the individuals who are what? They are the individuals who are ignorant of the haqq, of the truth. وَلَمْ يَعْرِفُوهُ, and they do not know it. Okay, they do not know it. He says, وَحَقٌّ لِسُورَةٍ تَشْتَمِلُ أَحَدَيْنِ شَفَائِينَ إِنْ يَسْتَشْفَ بِهَا مِنْ كُلِّ مَرَضٍ. He said, in the reality or the truth of this surah comprising of these two types of healing, and يَسْتَشْفَ بِهَا مِنْ كُلِّ مَرَضٍ, that every person should seek as a means or a treatment يعني to cure himself from. ولهذا لم يشتمل على هذا الشفاء الذي هو أعظم الشفاعين كان حصول الشفاعة الأدنى بها أولى كما سنبينه. He says, so after we mentioned the greatest type of cure that a person can have, and that's the heart first. I mean, يعني the heart being cured is more important than the body being cured. All right, even though you might say, well, the heart is a part of the body, right? We're getting time to that. That also help us out when you look into our psychology class dealing with Islamic towards psychology, Islamic framework towards psychology. We talks about that, the heart playing a major role in dealing with that, and this is how Islam approaches these subjects. All right, so the heart is one of the greatest. Then that which is lesser than that is the body. So Al-Faatihah don't only cure the actual heart, it also cures the illnesses found within the body. And he says, in order for us to understand that, then he's going to mention the hadith that comes in the Sunnah. And we should all know this hadith is a long hadith. The hadith is collected in Bukhari. It's from Sa'id al-Khudri. He talks about a group of companions. They travel, and when they travel, they sort to be some they stop with some people and sort to be, the people to be hospitable towards them. All right. So one of them, was stung by, it was refused the hospitality, and then they came back, and one of them was stung by a scorpion. All right, and then it mentioned that they asked for a way of compensation that they would help out the person who was stung with the scorpion, and as a ruqya, an incantation, they read Surah Al-Faatihah, and the person's sting was actually cured. So this shows that the physical effects that the Faatihah actually serves as a physical healing for the body. All right. So وقد قدم هذا حديث حصول الشفاء وهذا التضييق بقراءة الفاتحة عليه فقنته عن الدواء وربما بلغت من شفائه من لم يبلغه الدواء هنا مع كون محل غير قابل إما ليكون هؤلاء حي غير مسلمين وأهل بقلب ولوم فكيف إذا كان محل قابلا. All right, so he said this hadith comprises of what occurred of the healing of this sting from the sting that was from the scorpion, يعني بقراءة الفاتحة, by reading or reciting the Faatihah over the person who was stung with the actual thing, and a dawa. All right. وربما بلغ من شفائه ما لم يبلغه دواء هنا. All right. So it's possible that his healing is not from the one يعني دواء هنا مع كون محل غير قابل, even though the person يعني in the position of the person wasn't accepting of it. So you remember they didn't really accept their hospitality at first, right? He says, how much more so the issue of reading over somebody who does actually accept the Al-Fatiha. And the ulama, they go into detail about understanding the ruqya and how it is to be used. And one of the detailed things they said is that a person who's using it must actually believe in it. You must have actual 100% belief that the ruqya will actually work. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the prerequisites of it, that you should believe that it will take effect. Also, there was another report, Ibn Qayyim mentioned that he was in Mecca and was kind of ill, or someone mentioned a story to him that was in Mecca kind of ill, and the person recited Al-Fatiha to treat himself from the illness that he was feeling within the listening. So it shows that it does serve as a healing. I just wanted to mention something so that when we was talking about Iyyaka na'budu, Iyyaka nasta'in, that it brings about humility, is a statement of Yeah, Own Ibn Abdullah, rahimahullah. He said a beautiful statement. He says that, he says, وَلَا تَثِقْ بِكَثْرَةِ الْعَمَلِ فإنك لا تدري أيقبل أم لا أيقبل منك أم لا. He says, don't be someone who, let's think, don't be someone who is feel secure or يعني, who trusts the actions, many actions that he might have produced. Like if you did this, I did so much good deeds. Don't bank on that. Pretty much is what he's saying. I'm trying to give it to you the way that it's really what's intended or understood from the actual speech. Don't bank on so much of good deeds, right? He says, for rather you do not know whether or not the deeds themselves will be accepted from you or not. This is something you don't have. You don't have that knowledge. He says, وَلَا تَأْمَنْ ذُنُوبَكَ فَإِنَّكَ لَا تَدْرِي كُفِّرَتْ أَنْكَ أَمْ لَا. He says, and don't be so safe. Don't feel so safe from the consequences of your own sins because you don't know whether or not they have been expiated. They have been expiated, meaning forgiven or wiped out. You don't know. You don't know this, right? From you or not. He says, Inna amalaka mughibun anka kullahu. Major. He says, because when it comes to your actions, all of that is obscure to you. It is hidden from you. When it comes to your actions, the consequences, the reward of it is all hidden from you in terms of whether or not it be accepted or rejected. Only Allah Jalla wa'ala knows whether or not he will accept your action or reject your action. The servant doesn't have that knowledge. So he says, Inna amalaka mughibun anka kulluhu. All of it is obscure from you. So if you are a person who gives to doing good deeds, then know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala aids you in those good deeds first and foremost, and know that you must hope that Allah accept those good deeds, and you don't know whether or not those deeds were accepted, so you shouldn't bank on that. You shouldn't say, okay, I did all of this, so I know that I'm getting good. This is why you should be careful of saying that, inshallah ta'ala. When you say that you're a believer, you should know you should say, inshallah. Kama qala Shaykh Uthaymeen rahmatullah ta'ala. He says that when a person says, ana mu'min, he should attach to that, inshallah. I am a believer, you should say, inshallah. This shows tawadi, the humbleness. Also, we end with the dua of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says, Allahumma rahmataka arju. Oh Allah, rahmataka arju, I hope in your mercy. فَلَا تَكِلْنِي إِلَى نَفْسِي طُرَفَةُ عَيْنٍ, and do not lead me to myself for a blinking of an eye. وَأَصْلِحْ لِي شَأْنِي كُلَّهُ, and rectify all of my affairs. La ilaha illa anta, for none has the right to be worshipped except you. Whatever we said that was incorrect in our translation today was from ourselves, and when the shaitan was correct from Allah Jalla wa Ala. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallah khairan for tuning in, and Allah reward you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.